Mr. Kishore Kharat, the MD and CEO at Indian Bank. Mr. Kharat, firstly, while your gross NPAs have been stable, tell us about the Q3 slippages, recoveries and upgrades if you can.
This quarter actually fresh slippages were to the extent of 955 crores. But as against that, actually our recovery performance, if you see, it is much improved. Last quarter it was all put together, that is recovery and upgradations, put together was 385 crore, whereas in this quarter it is 984 crores. Actually our recovery from the bad debt is almost doubled. Why it is gone up by 184%. So the upgradations are also there. This quarter we also have actually given quite a good number of accounts to ARC, roughly around 363 NPA accounts we have given to ARC, and another 120 from the technical return of accounts also we have given to ARC. So this all has helped us to control NPAs. If you look at the absolute figures, absolute numbers are actually on a reducing trend, and therefore the percentage wise also, if you see last particularly YOY, last year it was 7.69%, it has come down to 6.27%, and net NPA also has come down from 4.76 to 3.30%.
And what is the exposure to RBI IBC accounts, both for the first as well as second list, and how much provisions have you made on that front?
See, out of NCLT accounts, in the first list we had 8 accounts, but the total exposure on all 8 accounts put together was roughly around 2,600 crores. In the second list we had 10 accounts, and in the 10 accounts our exposure is roughly around 785 crore. So if you see, all put together our exposure is 3,300 crores, and the provision which was required on all those was 2,482. As against that, more than 1,800 crores we have already done the provision. So roughly around 600 crore provision that was required to be that is required to be done in the Q4.
And what about your total stress sector exposure? Would FY19 see a lower provision as opposed to what we saw in last year?
Yeah, of course, FY19 will be much lower provisions, because if you look at our total stress book, it is absolutely in the single digit now. Last year it was 12.61% total stress portfolio, that has come down to 8.80%, and out of that 8.88% also, if you see, 6.27 is our gross NPA. So remaining is a restructured standard accounts. So around 4,000 crore is a restructured standard account which is now remaining in our books, but most of these accounts are performing good. So we don't see much pressures on that. Hardly less than 500 crore worth of account out of that are actually on our watch list. So therefore, going ahead, we feel that provision pressures will be much lesser.
Your NII growth has been strong. What are your Q3 margins versus what we saw in the last quarter? And what about your cost of funds? How have they panned out? And if you could give us some outlook as well for FY19?
Actually, if you look at our margins are improved, it has actually only on quarter basis, if you see, our NIM has gone to 2.91%, and actually 9 months also, if you see, it is 2.85%. Our attempt is to actually push these margins to more than 3%. If you look at our cost of fund also has come down to almost 5.25%, and yield down advances is actually not actually which we have protected, you can say. Yield down advances is also quite good, around 8.6%. So that way there is not much pressure on our margins. Secondly, there is a good robust growth is actually anticipated in the Q4 also. We already have shown the growth of close to 22% in our overall advances portfolio. But within that, our RAM sector, that is retail, MSME and agriculture, it has grown really fantastically. Our MSME growth is almost 38%, and within that, micro and small enterprises is grown by 42%. Now these are the sectors which give us better margins actually. So therefore, we are hoping that our margins will improve in the Q4, and in March 19 certainly it will improve further, because the stress also on our earnings will be reduced.
You've been one of the stronger banks in the PSU banking space. Have you been disappointed that the government did not infuse any capital? Having said that, what are your capital needs for FY19?
First of all, let me tell you that we are not disappointed, but we are happy that government has not given us capital. That shows our strength also, that this is the only bank, one bank which doesn't require any capital from the government, and even if government had offered us, perhaps we would have said that if possible not to give us capital, because our capital adequacy ratio itself is quite good. Secondly, we need to actually bring down the government holding also from 82% closely to less than 75% in FY19. So keeping that in mind, we have our internal accruals also quite good. We have our plans to raise also in the market. So we will be in a position to have a self-sufficiency insofar as capital is concerned. If you look at our Q3 capital, I think this was overall 12.44%. That is our CRAR, within which 10.99% is a CET1, which is almost close to 90%. So CET1 itself is well above the regulatory requirement of 9% and 10.25 including CCB. That gives us a strength to continue with this existing capital also for the growth. And if you look at it, the government has given the capital for many of the banks for the regulatory requirement. Since we are above the regulatory requirement, obviously capital was not required.
Okay, Mr. Kharat, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for taking the time out and speaking with us today at ET Now. That's the word from Indian Bank. No fresh capital infusion. They don't need more. And the outlook really coming in on where they see their books going forward into FY19.